Listen carefully. If you've ever looked back at a money decision and thought, how did I mess that up? This isn't about what you did, it's about when you did it. Picture this. It's late. The day is already heavy. You're tired, but your brain won't slow down. You open your banking app without really thinking, just to check, just to make sure nothing's wrong. And there it is, a charge you don't fully remember, a number that looks slightly off, not catastrophic, just enough to trigger that familiar feeling. You sigh, again. You start replaying decisions. That purchase, that upgrade, that it's fine, I deserve this moment. And the verdict arrives instantly. I'm bad with money. It feels logical, responsible even. Blame yourself and move on. But here's the uncomfortable part. Most of the time, the decision wasn't stupid. It wasn't impulsive. It wasn't reckless. It was made when you were exhausted, not physically, mentally. After a long workday, after a stressful week, after making decisions nonstop since morning, work decisions, social decisions, life decisions. By the time money shows up, you're already depleted. And depleted people don't make optimal choices. They make relieving ones. That doesn't mean you lack discipline. It means you're human. But nobody explains it that way. Instead, we're taught to treat every bad outcome as proof of a bad person behind it. So the label sticks. Bad with money, irresponsible, careless. And once you believe that, every future decision carries more pressure, more self-doubt, more second-guessing, which quietly makes the next decision even harder. So before we talk about budgets, apps, or willpower, there's a more important question we need to ask. What if the problem isn't your money skills at all? What if it's the condition under which you're being forced to use them? We're quick to name things. Too quick. When a decision backfires, we don't say, "That was a hard moment." We say, "That was a bad decision." And when it happens more than once, the label shifts. The decision isn't bad anymore. The person is. Bad with money. It sounds reasonable, almost responsible. If something keeps going wrong, the flaw must be internal. Lack of discipline, lack of knowledge, lack of control. So we look inward. We download another app. We promise to track every dollar. We swear this time will be different. But here's what rarely gets questioned. Why do these decisions almost always happen at the same moments? Not on calm mornings. Not when life feels spacious. Not when there's time to think. They happen late, after long days, after pressure, after restraint. Nobody impulse spends at their best. Yet hindsight erases context. It flattens the moment, turns a complex situation into a single, clean mistake. Of course you should have known better. Of course the numbers don't make sense now. Of course it looks obvious from the future. But the future wasn't the one making the decision. The past version of you was. The tired one, the overloaded one, the one choosing between relief and perfection. Calling that bad with money is convenient. It simplifies everything. It gives the problem a name, but it also hides the real cause. Because once you believe the label, you stop examining the conditions. You stop asking what was happening around you. You stop noticing patterns. And the system loves that. A world that demands constant decisions benefits when people blame themselves instead of the environment they're navigating. So the label sticks. Not because it's accurate, but because it's easy. And as long as the problem has the wrong name, it can't actually be addressed. Which raises a more uncomfortable thought. If these aren't bad decisions, what are they really? Here's what actually happens. Money decisions don't live in isolation. They're not made at a desk, with a clear head and a calculator nearby. They're made in between things, between meetings, between responsibilities, between obligations you didn't choose. By the time you face a money decision, you've already made dozens of others. You decided how to respond at work, what tone to use, when to hold back, when to comply. You decided what to ignore, what to postpone, what to carry mentally into tomorrow. All of that costs something, not money, energy, and energy is the part nobody budgets for. Every choice pulls from the same limited reserve: attention, focus, self-control. When that reserve is full, logic works. You compare options, you wait, you think long-term. But when it's drained, the brain switches modes. Not because you're weak, because it's efficient. It stops optimizing. It starts conserving. Relief becomes more valuable than improvement. That's when the bad decisions show up. Not dramatic ones, ordinary ones. Ordering convenience instead of cooking. Upgrading because you're tired of thinking. Putting something on a card just to make the moment stop pressing on you. None of these feel reckless. They feel necessary. And that's the trap. From the outside, it looks irrational. From the inside, it feels like survival. This is why advice so often fails. Because it assumes decisions are made with full capacity. They rarely are. The lion isn't choosing between good and bad. He's choosing between effort and relief, between friction and rest. And the system knows this. It's built to present financial choices exactly when people are most depleted, at the end of the day, at the end of the month, at the edge of patience. So the problem isn't that logic disappeared, it's that the conditions for using it did, which changes the question completely. If decisions depend on capacity, not character, what happens when capacity is always under pressure? Exhaustion doesn't announce itself. It doesn't feel like panic. It feels like narrowing. Fewer options feel available. Fewer pauses feel possible. Everything starts to look urgent, even when it isn't. That's the cost. When capacity stays low for too long, choices don't just get worse, they get smaller. You stop asking, what's best for me long term? You start asking, what will get me through today? Not because you gave up, because you adapted. The lion notices it in subtle ways. He delays decisions he knows matter. He avoids opening statements. He chooses certainty over flexibility, even when certainty is expensive. A fixed payment feels safer than an open question. A familiar expense feels better than an unknown risk. So the life around him hardens. More fixed costs, more routines that can't bend, more decisions that have already been made for him. And each one quietly reduces margin, not just financial margin, mental margin, the space to reconsider, the room to pause, the energy to choose differently next time. That's why it keeps compounding. Not because the lion keeps failing, but because exhaustion changes the rules of the game. What once felt like optional upgrades start to feel mandatory. What once felt temporary starts to feel permanent. And the most dangerous part is how reasonable it all feels. No single choice looks like a mistake. No moment feels dramatic enough to stop. Until one day, the lion looks around and realizes his life is optimized for endurance, not freedom. He isn't reckless. He isn't irresponsible. He's exhausted. And exhaustion is expensive. Because it doesn't just affect what you buy. It affects what you believe is even possible. Which is why this matters more than any single decision. When exhaustion becomes normal, limitations start to feel like facts. And that's when the cost is no longer temporary. This is where the story usually goes wrong. Most explanations end with advice. Track more, optimize harder, be disciplined, but that misses the point. Because the problem was never a lack of knowledge, it was a lack of space. Good decisions don't come from pressure. They come from margin, time margin, mental margin, financial margin. The lion doesn't need to become smarter. He needs fewer moments where every choice feels urgent. That's the shift. Money isn't just math. It's the environment decisions are made inside. When that environment is tight, choices shrink. When it's spacious, clarity returns. This reframes everything. Instead of asking, why do I keep making bad money decisions? The better question becomes, What keeps putting me in positions where good decisions are hard? That question doesn't blame, it observes. And observation changes what you notice. You start seeing how often your life demands immediacy, how rarely it allows pause, how many systems profit from your exhaustion, not because they're evil, because they're efficient. Once you see that, the goal quietly shifts. Not perfect discipline, not flawless execution, but conditions that make clarity possible. Less constant urgency, more room between decisions, fewer irreversible commitments. That's where real control lives. Not in forcing yourself to perform better inside a bad environment, but in shaping an environment where you don't have to. This doesn't solve everything, but it explains something most people feel and rarely name. And once you name it, those bad decisions start to look less like personal failures and more like signals. Signals pointing to pressure, to exhaustion, to a lack of margin. That's not the end of the conversation. It's the beginning of a clearer one. If this video changed the way you think, hit like and subscribe. More ideas like this are coming. See you in the next one.